Hey guys, welcome back once again to another session of the Montrealites book club. We're going to be looking at our third author today, and we have already looked at two other authors, Knut Hamsun, a Norwegian writer, and Celine, who was a French writer, and we talked about how both of these writers were very influential 19th century writers, and very influential what they did for modernity in terms of aesthetic styles and writing styles and narrative structures and experimentation, all that. So we're going to look at another 19th century writer. This time it's an American writer by the name of Sherwood Anderson. This is his most well-known and most celebrated work called, as you can see, Winesburg, Ohio. So now, Sherwood Anderson, like we said, was an American writer. He was born in 1876, which would put him almost in between Knut Hamsun and Celine in terms of age. So he was an American writer, and Sherwood Anderson is another one of my all-time favorites, especially this book, this collection of short stories. This is actually a collection, not short stories, sorry, it's a short work of almost episodic incidents and narratives of these inhabitants of this small rural town in Ohio, Winesburg, Ohio. And it's essentially a window into the lives of these characters, these various characters that populate this small town. And Sherwood Anderson, this book was released in 1919. Okay, so when you think about the other writers at the time, the great American writers, the tradition writers, you can see just how influential Sherwood Anderson was for these writers. For instance, as it says in the introduction to the book, Sherwood Anderson preceded writers such as Hemingway, Faulkner, Woolf, Steinbeck, Cadwell, Soroyan, Henry Miller, and those are just a few. And it's not only that he preceded these American writers, but these writers were directly influenced by him. They acknowledged that they're influenced by him. Thomas Wolfe went so far as to say that in 1936 he proclaimed that the only man in America who ever taught him anything was Sherwood Anderson. I don't know about you guys, but I really love Steinbeck, the works of Steinbeck. Generally speaking, American fiction, especially the earlier stuff, is I'm very partial to that style of writing. And so Sherwood Anderson really set the groundwork in a number of ways for future writers. His way of, his sense of exposition, for instance, his sense of being able to depict the lives of these people, a very realistic, tender, beautiful depiction of the lives of his subjects, really kind of set the precedent for the rest of for the 20th century, let alone the 19th century. So there's not much more I can really say about Sherwood Anderson. If you're familiar with the works of the other American writers that I listed, Soroyan, for instance, was an Armenian American writer, and very, very similar in tone to Sherwood Anderson. So maybe you've heard of Anderson, maybe you've heard of Soroyan. In either case, if you're, like I say, a fan of Steinbeck or Faulkner or Miller, chances are you can get something out of this book. Those writers sure did. So what more can I really say? I mean, like I say, it is one of my favorites. It kind of deals with, during the time of its composition, is a time of great change, a time of industrialization, a time of urbanization. You saw less subsistence on farms, for instance, in the U.S. that whole idea of the small rural town was essentially coming undone. It was being threatened by modernity, by development, and that's what makes Sherwood Anderson's work unique in a way. And similarly with Steinbeck and the others, and that's part of the reason we read them. It's to get a glimpse of that Americana, that sense of what it was like back then, that sense of that sense of the times, essentially, what things looked like. It's really fascinating, and the way he captures that fading era of the rural towns, the small towns, middle America. That's really the beauty here, because in many ways, it's not a sad book. They're not sad tales, but the characters, you could make an argument that the lives of each of the characters are tinged with a certain sadness and melancholy that would, it makes sense that if you think about it in terms of the end of an era, the end of a very certain lifestyle, as people lived, for instance, in Ohio and the other Middle America states, the other farm states. So you see the end of an era, and you see that reflected in the depiction of the characters. In this specific book, some of the characters, for instance, in the small town of Winesburg, Ohio, you have, for instance, there's one character, a woman who essentially puts off getting married and holds out for the man of her first love, for her first man that she loves, who essentially went off to pursue his own dreams and ambitions in the city, while she stayed back in Ohio and waited for him, and he never returned. So that's one of the kinds of stories of these individuals who are in some way damaged, or in some way just out of sync with what's going on, and affected in some way by modernity or lost. Another example would be there's one character, probably the most memorable character in the short work, is a character by the name of Hans, who, Hans, as in hands, he's one of the inhabitants of the small town, and yet he has, for some reason, his defining feature is his awkwardness when it comes to his hands. He doesn't know what to do with his hands. They're very nice hands, we're told, but it's on. Anderson puts emphasis on this one small detail, and then makes it this man's defining feature. And on account of his hands and his awkwardness, and not really knowing how to, deal with his hands, these like extraneous appendages that make him essentially make him an outsider, make him an outcast. And so most of the tales in this book, most of the characters all suffer. They have some peculiar little quirk or flaw, or are in some way, like their whole identity, their whole world, which is coming to a close, is some way tinged with sadness. And you realize, 1919, long been over 100 years now, all close to, but Sherwood Anderson is definitely a unique, in terms of American literature, English literature, but he really set, like I said, he set the precedent, he set the bar for future writers, and, if you are into the kind of stuff like I was saying, and Steinbeck, which I can't see how anyone wouldn't appreciate Steinbeck, and if you haven't read any Sherwood Anderson, do yourself a favor and at least check out Winesburg, Ohio. He does have other extended works, some novels, but Poor White, for instance, Wendy McPherson's Son is another one, and then there's another short collection called Teller's Tales, which I've been told is amazing. I actually had that book in my possession, but gave it away to a friend before I finished reading it, because Sherwood Anderson happens to be his favorite author as well. So do yourself a favor, get some Anderson. Like I said, get to the Word bookstore on Milton. They usually, I know, even as of right now, as I'm filming this video, I recently saw they had a copy of Winesburg on the shelf. And, you know, quick read, nothing too, like, for instance, reading Faulkner can be somewhat challenging. The idiom and, you know, the prose can be pretty terse, but with Anderson, it's really not like that. It's straightforward, easy reading. I mean, not overly easy reading, anything like that. You know, overly easy in sentiment, but just a great, fun read. Kind of emotional, kind of very pithy, very revealing. And so, yeah, guys. You know, what more can I say? Hopefully, if you do check it out, you'll appreciate it as much as I have. And I came across this quite a while ago, so it really had an effect on me, as it did on so many other writers, which some of which we will definitely be discussing. For instance, I mean, you know, John Fonte, who was a precursor of Bukowski, two writers we'll be talking about, that were both aware of Anderson, and you know, so I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a comparison between you know, what was going on in Europe at the time, and in Scandinavia and Norway, and what was going on in the States with guys like Sherwood Anderson, primarily Sherwood Anderson. And another thing is, you know, he doesn't really get all that much credit, or outside of the actual writers that know him and that were influenced his you know, those that came after him. Sherwood Anderson is not, you know, if you're taking a survey in American literature, you won't. I've never really seen great emphasis or much mention of Sherwood Anderson. A writer that we probably won't be getting into, but was, you know, came shortly after Anderson and picked up on a lot of his stylistic approaches and his themes, was William Saroyan, and he wrote a book called a collection of short stories, The Daring Young Man and the Flying Trapeze, and also a novel called The Human Comedy, both of which are amazing. If you care for Sherwood Anderson, you care for guys like Steinbeck, you know, then by all means you'll love Saroyan. So Sherwood Anderson, Winesburg, Ohio, probably rate this like a 9, I guess. I mean, once again, all these books that we've been going over, there's not really anything to really judge them by, because in many ways they were the first of their kind. Like critics have pointed out, when Sherwood Anderson actually released this book, the older generation scorned him for essentially breaking with tradition and coming up with new approaches to depicting American life, and the newer generation didn't really understand him all that much because he was kind of ahead of his time. But in any case, within a generation or two, it became pretty clear, the importance of this work became very clear, and you know, to those who know him, usually know him very well. So guys, once again, Sherwood Anderson, Winesburg, Ohio. Do yourself a favor. You really should have this on your shelf. I mean, there's no excuses. It's just great work. As always, rate, comment. Please, you know, want to hear what you got to say. Feedback is kind of what this is all about. Sharing ideas. So, you know, drop us a couple lines here at Montrealites. Share, and keep reading, and be good. Until next time.